Imagine you're standing on a stage in front of thousands of people. You've built a multi-million-dollar company, you host one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and everyone thinks you have the secret sauce. Now, imagine someone asks you, if it all disappeared tomorrow, the money, the fame, the followers, what are the fundamental truths that would allow you to build it all back from scratch? This isn't a hypothetical exercise. This is the reality of Stephen Bartlett's philosophy. Today, we are deconstructing the Diary of a CEO, the 33 Laws of Business and Life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am so excited to get into this one. Usually, when we talk about business books, people expect spreadsheets, marketing funnels, and corporate jargon. But this book? This is different. This is a manual for the human brain. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a student, or someone just trying to level up your personal life, these laws are the bedrock of excellence. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand why your knowledge is your weakest asset, why friction is actually your best friend, and how to master the 5 buckets that determine your entire life's trajectory. Let's jump straight into the deep end with law number 1. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order. Stephen argues that every human being has 5 buckets: knowledge, skills, network, resources, and reputation. Most people spend their whole lives chasing the 4th bucket, resources, also known as money. They want the paycheck before they have the craft. But here's the cold, hard truth. The professional world is a lagging indicator of your personal growth. If you jump straight to resources without filling your knowledge and skills buckets first, your success is a house of cards. One gust of wind, one market crash, and it's over. But if you fill them in order, knowledge first, then skills, then using those to build a network, the resources and reputation will follow as a natural consequence. You can lose your money, but you can never lose your skills. Think about that for a second. If you lost everything today, which bucket would save you? It's a sobering thought, isn't it? Now, before we move into the psychology of how we actually make decisions, I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this breakdown and you want to ensure your own knowledge bucket stays topped up, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's the digital equivalent of a high five, and it helps us keep the lights on and the insights flowing. Back to the laws. Let's talk about the absurdity of knowledge. Stephen makes a brilliant point here. Knowledge is useless without experimentation. We live in an era of information obesity. We consume podcasts, we read books. Hey, you're doing it right now. But knowledge only becomes power when it is applied. He suggests that the most successful people aren't the ones who know the most, they're the ones with the shortest gap between an idea and execution. How long does it take you to try something once you've learned it? If that gap is months, you're losing. If it's hours, you're winning. This leads us to a concept that might sound counterintuitive. You must lean into friction. We're taught to make life easy, to find the path of least resistance. But in the world of high performance, friction is where the growth happens. Stephen talks about the law of the social butterfly. He noticed that the most successful guests on his show weren't just the smartest, they were the ones who were willing to be uncomfortable the most often. Let's look at the pink goldfish concept. In business, we are told to best the competition. Stephen says, don't be better, be different. If you are 10% better than your competitor, you're replaceable. If you are 10% different, you're a category of 1. He uses the example of a pink goldfish, something so unique that it defies comparison. What is your pink factor? What is the one thing you do that makes people say, that's weird, but I love it? As we navigate through these first few laws, you start to see a pattern. It's not about the what, it's about the how. It's about the psychological framework you use to view the world. Another heavy hitter is the law of the 1% margin. You've probably heard of marginal gains, the idea that improving everything by 1% leads to a massive total improvement. But Stephen adds a layer of the Diary of a CEO flavor to it. He emphasizes that the 1% isn't just about efficiency, it's about the compounding interest of your character. Every time you choose the hard path, every time you choose honesty over an easy lie, you're adding 1% to your reputation bucket. Over a decade, that interest makes you untouchable. Let's pause and recap what we've covered in this first half of our deep dive. First, the 5 buckets. Stop chasing the money and start filling the knowledge and skill buckets. They are the only things that can't be taken away from you. Second, the execution gap. Information is just noise until you act on it. Shrink the time between I should and I did. And third, become a pink goldfish. Differentiation is the only true form of job security in 2026. We're just scratching the surface of these 33 laws. In our next segment, we're going to talk about the context law, why your environment is more powerful than your willpower, and how to master the art of quitting. Yes, quitting is a skill. Let's dive into one of the most controversial laws in the book, the law of quitting. We're raised on a diet of winners never quit and quitters never win. Stephen Bartlett calls absolute nonsense on that. In fact, he argues that strategic quitting is a superpower. The most successful people in the world are professional quitters. They quit the wrong jobs, the wrong relationships, and the wrong habits quickly so they can double down on the things that actually work. But how do you know when to quit? Stephen gives us a simple framework, the quit framework. Ask yourself, is it hard or is it bad? If it's just hard, you push through. That's where the growth is. But if it's bad, meaning it no longer aligns with your goals or your values, you are suffering from sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've spent 3 years on a failing project doesn't mean you should spend a fourth. Quitting is an invitation for a better opportunity to enter your life. This leads us directly into the law of context. We like to think we have incredible willpower, but Stephen's research into behavioral science shows that our environment is much stronger than our resolve. If you want to eat healthy, but your kitchen is full of junk food, you will eventually eat the junk food. It's not a character flaw, it's human nature. The law here is simple. Design your environment so that the right choice is the easiest choice. If you want to be a world-class entrepreneur, surround yourself with people who talk about ideas, not people who gossip about others. Your context is the invisible hand shaping your future. Now, let's talk about the pressure is a privilege law. We live in a culture that treats stress like a disease. While chronic toxic stress is definitely harmful, Stephen argues that the right kind of pressure is a requirement for excellence. Think about a diamond. A diamond is just a piece of coal that handled pressure exceptionally well. If you have no pressure in your life, you have no stakes. If you have no stakes, you have no growth. The goal isn't to live a life without pressure, it's to build a skill bucket so deep that you can handle higher and higher levels of it. Before we move into the laws regarding leadership and how to handle other people, let's take a mid-roll breath. If you're finding these laws as life-changing as I did when I first read them, do me a favor. Take a screenshot of your podcast player right now and share it on your Instagram or LinkedIn story. Tag us. We love seeing where in the world you're listening from. It helps us grow the community and keep bringing these deep dives to your ears every week. Back to the masterclass. Let's talk about the law of the umbrella. When you become a leader or a person of influence, your job shifts. You are no longer the one doing the work. You are the one protecting the people who do the work. You are the umbrella that keeps the corporate rain and the unnecessary stress off your team so they can focus on their genius. Stephen notes that the best CEOs aren't the loudest voices in the room. They are the best listeners. They realize that their reputation is built on the success of their subordinates. Then there is the law of social proof. In 2026, attention is the new gold, but attention without trust is worthless. Stephen breaks down how we're wired to follow the crowd. If you want to sell a product or an idea, don't tell people how good it is, show them that other people think it's good.
This is why testimonials, reviews, and case studies are more powerful than any million-dollar ad campaign. We are tribal creatures. We look to our left and to our right to see what is safe and what is valuable. But here's the kicker, the law of vulnerability. In a world of filtered Instagram photos and perfectly polished LinkedIn resumes, vulnerability is a competitive advantage. When Stephen started sharing his failures, his anxieties, and his diary entries, his podcast exploded. Why? Because perfection is intimidating, but flaws are relatable. People don't want to follow a robot. They want to follow a human who has figured a few things out but is still learning. Let's move toward the final stretch of today's session. We've covered quitting, context, pressure, and leadership. Now we have to look at the law of the 1,000-day rule. Everyone wants the overnight success. Stephen, who started his first business in his bedroom and went through years of struggle before his big exit, reminds us that it takes roughly 1,000 days of consistent effort before you see the hockey stick growth curve. Most people quit on day 300. They quit right before the compounding interest kicks in. If you can stay in the game longer than everyone else, you win by default. To wrap up this second part of our journey through the 33 laws, let's look at your roadmap for this week. First, audit your environment. Is your context helping you or hurting you? Change one small thing in your physical space today to make your goals easier to reach. Second, identify one thing you're doing out of sunk cost fallacy. Is it time to quit? And third, embrace the pressure. If things feel heavy right now, it's because you're leveling up.
We've talked about the buckets, the environment, and the art of strategic quitting, but now we have to address the most powerful force in human history. It's the thing that built empires, started revolutions, and, on a smaller scale, is the reason you choose one brand of coffee over another. I'm talking about the power of storytelling. Stephen Bartlett's law of storytelling is simple. The best story wins. It doesn't matter if you have the best product, the best CV, or the best idea in the room. If you cannot wrap that idea in a narrative that touches the human heart, it will die in the vacuum of logic. Facts tell, but stories sell. Why? Because our brains are not hardwired for data. They're hardwired for survival and connection. When you tell a story, you trigger a physical response in your listener. You release oxytocin, the trust chemical. If you want to be a leader, stop memorizing statistics and start mastering the arc of the hero's journey. This leads us into the law of conflict. Stephen points out that most people try to avoid conflict in their brand or their personal life because they want to be liked by everyone. But if you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one. A great story needs a villain. It needs a problem to solve. Whether that villain is inefficiency, injustice, or just the way things have always been done, you must take a stand. Conflict creates tension, and tension creates attention. Now let's look at something a bit more internal, the law of the oatmeal effect. This is a fascinating psychological concept Stephen explores regarding how we perceive value. If you give someone a bowl of oatmeal for free, they don't value it. If you charge them $20 for it and tell them it was harvested by monks in the Himalayas, it suddenly tastes better. The lesson here isn't about deception, it's about framing. How you frame yourself and your work dictates how the world treats you. If you treat your time as cheap, the world will buy it for pennies. If you frame your work as a rare, high-value craft, the world will respect the price tag. Before we hit the final laws, let's talk about the midlife crisis of success. Stephen has interviewed hundreds of billionaires and icons, and he noticed a recurring pattern. Many of them reached the top of the mountain, only to find it empty. This is the law of happiness is a direction, not a destination. We often tell ourselves, I'll be happy when I get the promotion, or I'll be happy when I have $1 million. This is a biological lie. Our dopamine systems are designed to reward the pursuit, not the possession. The moment you hit the goal, the dopamine drops.
If you don't enjoy the process of filling your buckets, you will never be happy with a full bucket. As we move toward the final summary of Stephen's 33 laws, I want to talk about the legacy law. At the end of the day, your life is a diary. Every day you're writing a page. The question Stephen asks us to consider is, if someone read your diary 100 years from now, would they find a story worth telling? Excellence isn't a single act, it's the consistency of your entries. Let's bring it all home with the final summary checklist of the most transformative principles we've discussed today. First, master the psychology of the story. In every meeting, interview, or date, remember that people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how your story made them feel. Second, understand the dopamine of the process. Stop waiting for the arrival and fall in love with the daily grind. That is where life actually happens. And third, the law of the 1,000 days. Success is a game of attrition. If you are going through hell, keep going. Most people stop when they get tired. Winners stop when they're done. I want to thank you for spending these 20 minutes with me. We've covered a lot of ground, from the 5 buckets to the quit framework and the power of vulnerability. Stephen Bartlett didn't write this book to give you a shortcut. He wrote it to give you a compass. The map of business and life is always changing, but these laws are the North Star. If you found value in this deep dive, please share this episode with someone who is currently in the middle of their 1,000 days. Let them know they're not alone in the struggle. And if you haven't already, grab a copy of The Diary of a CEO. It's a book that deserves a permanent spot on your shelf. I'm so grateful for your time and your curiosity. It's what keeps this show going. Until next time, keep writing a story that you'd be proud to read back. Stay curious, stay hungry, and I'll see you in the next episode.